Imagine your loved one in a clinical trial hoping for a breakthrough in dementia care. Now, think that the drug company running the study holds back vital information. As a result, your loved one passes away. This is not fiction. The drug company running the study failed to reveal vital genetic information that resulted in the death of innocent people. But why? What went wrong? How did the FDA let this happen in the first place? And what can you learn from this harrowing story? I'm Lorenzo. I'm a dementia care professional with over 20 years experience. In 2014, the Alzheimer's Foundation of America named me the Dementia Care Professional of the Year in the United States. I've seen this disease ravage hundreds of my clients. 2 deaths and over 100 cases of severe brain bleeding. This was the human cost of a decision made behind closed doors by Eisai, the pharma company at the center of this story. They were testing Leqembi, a new Alzheimer's drug that targets beta-amyloid protein in the brain. As reported in various sources like the New York Times, Fierce Biotech, the LA Times, and the website aboutlawsuits.com, Eisai wanted to include people who were genetically more likely to develop Alzheimer's. These people carry 2 copies of a gene called ApoE4. You may have heard of this before. ApoE4 entered mainstream news a few years ago when movie star Chris Hemsworth learned that he carried 2 copies of this gene. People with 2 copies can have up to a 15 times increased risk of developing Alzheimer's, and they're likely going to experience symptoms as early as their 50s. But if you're taking Leqembi, having 2 copies of the gene is also going to increase the chance that you'll experience brain swelling and bleeding. Eisai conducted genetic tests on participants, but didn't tell them about their ApoE4 status or the risks associated with it. As a result, 274 people with this high-risk profile entered into the trial without knowing that they faced a higher risk for these serious side effects. At least 2 people died. One was a 79-year-old woman living in Florida who died after just 3 doses of the drug. Her autopsy showed 51 tiny brain bleeds that were directly linked to the drug's side effects. In her final hours, she thrashed so violently that nurses had to tie her down. Another person also died after 3 infusions due to complications from a stroke. Her autopsy showed widespread brain bleeding that her doctor said was unlike anything I really encountered across the spectrum of human illnesses. In another instance, a different drug company, Eli Lilly, tested a similar drug called Kisunla. They also didn't inform 289 people in their trial that their genetic profile was going to make them vulnerable to brain bleeds. Why did the drug companies need these high-risk individuals in their study? Probably they wanted people more prone to Alzheimer's so they could better evaluate the drug's effectiveness. If the drugs would work on these high likelihood people, it could be a real blockbuster. But why didn't they just inform participants about their genetic risk? You could argue that it would affect trial integrity. Some experts suggest that the companies feared losing participants if they disclosed this information. Others argue that they wanted to gather data on the drug's effects in this high-risk group, regardless of the potential harm. But this lack of transparency flies in the face of informed consent. Participants have the ethical right to know about potential risks before agreeing to a trial. By withholding this critical genetic information, the companies denied people the opportunity to make an informed decision about their health and safety. Let's look at the science behind Leqembi and Kisunla. They are new drugs that work differently from earlier treatments. These meds target beta-amyloid, a misshapen protein that forms plaques in the brains of Alzheimer's patients. Scientists have long believed that these plaques contribute to the disease progression. The drugs attach to beta-amyloid proteins and mark them for removal by the body's immune system. The approach aims to reduce the amount of plaque in the brain, and the hope is that that will slow down the advance of Alzheimer's. It's a more direct method compared to older drugs that basically manage symptoms without addressing underlying causes. But it is not proven that amyloid beta is in fact the cause of Alzheimer's. These plaques are present in virtually all Alzheimer's cases, but some experts question if it's really a cause or just part of the symptoms. It's like smoke and fire. Anytime there's fire, you also have smoke. But that doesn't mean that the smoke causes the fire. And as this article explains, there are many people who pass away with amyloid plaque in their brains. It shows up in the autopsy, but they never showed cognitive decline. So while Leqembi's focus on amyloid plaque represents Big Pharma's best guess at controlling Alzheimer's, the benefits of these drugs are pretty modest. The FDA approved Leqembi based on data that would slow cognitive decline by about 5 months. And Kisunla achieved a slightly longer delay, but neither drug can halt or reverse the progression of the disease. What do you think? Is 5 months worth it? I guess if it's you or a loved one, Maybe so. I went through this with my mom. When it's personal, you want to be able to place hope in anything. But maybe a good question also to ask is, are these drugs worth their price? Leqembi costs $26,500 per year, and this does not include the extra expenses for frequent MRI scans, which you have to monitor for the side effects like brain swelling and bleeding. Right now, Leqembi is paid for by Medicare, which means that the U.S. taxpayer pays for it. But given the side effects, should the FDA ever have approved Leqembi in the first place? There are many countries that have not approved the drug. Did the FDA prioritize speed over safety? It's not yet approved in Canada, and it's not yet approved in Australia. Europe's drug regulator, the EMA, initially decided not to approve Leqembi. And as the Australian agency volunteered in this announcement, they didn't approve it because they felt the benefits are small compared to the risks. Now, just a few days ago from the recording of this video, the European agency revised its negative decision and approved Leqembi as long as treatment is not given to people who have 2 copies of the ApoE4 gene. In other words, they felt that giving the treatment to people with both genes, as Eisai did, is dangerous. Therefore, the FDA's stance among other countries raises concerns. What's the background for this? Overall, the outlook for dementia drugs is bad. According to one study, it's so bad that they were no more effective in improving symptoms than the sugar pills that were used as placebos. See the video on my channel on this topic. But the problem is enormous. Dementia affects millions of people and is only likely to get much worse. With the massive market size, Big Pharma is investing billions trying to find a solution. So even though the drugs do poorly, analysts say that they've invested so much money that their effort has become too big to fail. Leqembi isn't the first drug with questionable benefits. In 2021, pharma company Biotech received accelerated approval for a drug called Aduhelm, which was the first drug of this category designed to fight amyloid plaques. But as this article shows, the approval created a boatload of controversy due to murky evidence about the drug's effectiveness, severe side effects, and an FDA approval process that even led to a congressional inquiry. That's correct. After 18 months, a congressional panel said that the FDA and Biogen had a very deep, troubling collaboration that went beyond normal and had a lot of communications that even did not get documented. They said that the price tag of $56,000 a year just wasn't justified, and they felt that the FDA's decision to give accelerated approval was based on poor evidence that it overlooks safety risks. Drill down into the history of Leqembi and you'll find other things that are troubling. One of these is the fact that the brain bleed side effects has been given a very sweet-sounding name called ARIA. ARIA has nothing to do with music. It was a term created by a group of pharma executives to describe the potential fatal bleeding and swelling in the brain caused by drugs like Leqembi. ARIA stands for amyloid-related imaging abnormalities, with the word imaging referring to them MRI scans you need to have to identify the brain bleeds. But many doctors think this is misleading because it's more than just an imaging abnormality. Many doctors feel that it puts a very pretty name on a very ugly condition. In this article, a Stanford neurologist and his colleagues voiced their concerns about the use of the term ARIA. The name ARIA goes back to 2010 when the FDA proposed that pharma companies testing anti-amyloid drugs exclude anyone who had more than 2 tiny brain bleeds already. But the companies working on the trials viewed this requirement as excessively restrictive. The pharma executives made a counter-proposal that people be permitted in the trials even if they have as many as 4 of these tiny micro brain bleeds. And at that time, they proposed calling the brain bleeding ARIA. Alzheimer's is a horrible condition, and pharma companies are investing billions in the search for drugs that could change things dramatically for people who have the disease and the people who care for them. But the trials conducted by Eisai and Eli Lilly expose what I think are ethical lapses. On one hand, science can advance if risks are not taken. But on the other hand, by withholding crucial genetic information from participants, these companies compromised patient safety and violated the principle of informed consent. The modest benefits of drugs like Leqembi and Kisunla, which only delay cognitive decline by a few months, raise questions about their high costs and potential risks. The fact that other countries have not approved Leqembi in the same way as the FDA highlights the need for a better approval process in the US that includes thorough, unbiased evaluation of new treatments. These types of discussions are way above my pay grade, but this much I know for sure. The likelihood of a cure for Alzheimer's that will have any meaningful impact on people who have symptoms today is extremely low. While we wait for the pharma industry to figure things out, we should focus as individuals and caregivers on the nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle techniques that have been proven to help make our brains healthy. See my video on the powerful effects of a supplement called Glynac, or another one called magnesium L-threonate. Also see my video on the 10 foods you should be including in a brain-healthy diet. This doesn't mean we should give up meds, but maybe a more holistic approach would help. Combining the best of modern medicine with natural remedies could offer more comprehensive support for cognitive function. Remember that supplements, even natural ones, can interact with your meds and may not always be suitable for everyone. Always talk to your doctor before changing anything up or starting any new supplement regimen, especially if you have existing health conditions or are taking other medications. So let's wrap this up. A controversial drug called Leqembi is Big Pharma's latest attempt to conquer Alzheimer's. It works by attacking the amyloid plaques that develop in the brain of Alzheimer's patients. But no one knows for sure if amyloid actually is the cause of Alzheimer's or just one of the symptoms. The drug's manufacturer, Eisai, did not share important risk information with trial participants, and a number of people in the trial died. Necessarily, there are risks with new drugs. The devastating consequence of Alzheimer's raises the stakes. But none of the drugs developed in the last 30 years have had any meaningful impact. At best, they only mildly control the symptoms for a short while. In the meantime, we should all try to have the best diet possible, exercise regularly, and try to get good sleep. If you want, you can also try certain supplements that seem to support brain health. Always check with your doctor before making any changes to your diet or routine. Thank you for watching, and please see all my videos in my channel devoted to how you can take the best care of yourself and your loved ones.